Reflection, Chapter 3. Mulan inhaled. Good, keep him talking. Surprised you how? You worked hard, Shang continued. He sounded far away, almost delirious. You got better, and you got smart. He closed his eyes. No, you were always smart. I didn't see that at first, but I did see that when you got better, everyone else wanted to improve too. You inspired them to work hard, Ping. His voice drifted. You had faith in them, but I didn't have faith in you. His eyes opened again, surprisingly clear this time. Mulan could see her face reflected in his pupils, framed by pools of deep, deep brown. I'm sorry. Shang, there's nothing to be sorry about. Shang reached for the canteen. He held it himself, hands shaky, and took a long sip. Then he exhaled. Ping, I know I'm dying. You're not. I can feel it. Shang set down the canteen and his hand fell to his side in the snow. You should leave me here. I'm not leaving you, Mulan said firmly. You're coming with me. Shang coughed, and the corners of his lips lifted into a wry but tired smile. Still can't follow orders, can you, soldier? Shang coughed again, and Mulan reached for the sack of blankets Yao Ling had made as a pillow for him. She carefully arranged it under his head. Sweat beaded his temples, and she patted his skin dry before it froze. When he blinked again, this time his eyes were bloodshot. Shang, are you all right? He let his head sink into the makeshift pillow. I thought I saw my father earlier. I know, Mulan replied quietly. You called out for him. You must have been dreaming. Shang turned his head, his gaze meeting hers. In my dream, he was still alive. His voice was tight, and Mulan could tell he hadn't yet had the chance to grieve for his father. The news of General Li's death had come too suddenly. My father was a general for 20 years. He died protecting China. Ever since I was young, I wanted to follow in his footsteps. He managed a weak laugh. But here I am, about to die after my first battle in command. You aren't going to I wanted to become a general like my father. Shang interrupted. I wanted to win battles and bring honor to my family name. Is it selfish to wish I could keep living? Is it dishonorable of me, Ping? I want to continue protecting our country, our emperor. No, said Mulan. It isn't selfish or dishonorable at all. Shang lay back, letting his head settle into the blankets. The Huns won't be the last of China's problems. The emperor will always face new threats, new invaders. He needs to have a strong, brave men at his side. Men like you, Ping. Shang, Mulan said, trying again. Stop talking like this. Now that it's all over, now that my time on this earth is done, do you know what comforts me the most? He waited, so Mulan gave in. What? She asked quietly. Shang lowered his voice. That I have made a friend like you, Ping. Someone I can trust completely. Tears pricked the edges of Mulan's eyes. This time she didn't try to hold them back. She knew she couldn't. She swallowed, choking on her words. Stop talking like this. It's my fault you're wounded. I would have thought of firing that last cannon in the mountains, Shang confessed. I went after you to get the cannon back, but you saved us. It was an honor to protect you. How strange, then, that Mulan's tongue grew heavy. There was so much she wanted to tell him. That it was her fault he was hurt. That if only she'd been more alert, she would have anticipated Shan Yu's attack. She wanted to tell him that he was the best leader their troops could have hoped for. A lesser man would have left her to die at Shan Yu's hands. But Shang was only courteous. He believed in his soldiers, and treated them as part of his team. She remembered how proud she'd been during their training when she defeated him on one-on-one combat, the satisfied smile that lit up his face as he wiped his jaw after her kick. She would never forget it. She wanted to tell him that she admired him and had always wanted his friendship. Yet a word could crawl out of her mouth. Only a choke, and a guttural sound she barely recognized as her own, except that it burned in her throat. She turned away and fumbled with her canteen so Shang wouldn't see the tears sliding down her cheeks. "What will you do now that the war is over, Ping?" Shane asked. "Will you go home?" "Home?" Mulan repeated. She hadn't thought about that yet. Would things be different when she returned home, now that she'd served as a soldier in the army? Or would they go back to the way they had been? How could they, though, after everything that had happened, everything she'd done? "Yes, I'd like to." Shang reached for her arm. "Your family will be very proud of you, Ping. I heard that you've taken your father's place. He was an esteemed warrior. My father always held him in high regard." Mulan kept silent. How could she tell Shang that she was really a girl, that she'd stolen her father's armor and conscription notice to join the army? Yes, she's done it to save her father from having to serve again. He was an old man now. He walked with a cane and had never fully recovered from his battle injuries fighting for China decades ago. Just thinking of it made her heart heavy. The last night she'd been home, she'd stolen a grip at Baba's practicing his battle stances with his sword. Not even a minute into his exercise he collapsed, clutching his injured leg in pain. Seeing that, she knew he wouldn't survive. She had to be the one to go in his place. But her reasons didn't matter. She disobeyed her parents, dishonored them. They must have been so angry when they found out she left. They had a right to be angry. She not only disobeyed them, but worse. She lied to them. She deceived them, the same way she deceived Shang. Oh, how she wanted to tell him the truth. But not now. Not like this. The silence dragged on. Mulan knew she should say something. But what? Shang's words had been so honest, so sincere. The thought of her as a true friend, someone he trusted. Little did he know that she'd been lying to him this whole time. "You think he's a great captain," she reminded herself. "That was never a lie. And now? Now you think of him as a friend too." "I'm glad to be your friend," she said quietly. Shang smiled again, a smaller smile than the last time. Mulan could tell he was struggling not to show his pain. "Will you do something for me?" "Yes, of course," she blurted. "Anything." Shang stared up at the clouds drifting across the sky. Mulan looked up too. Geese threaded the clouds like they were sifting through snow. "Take my ashes home to my mother," he whispered, "so I might be buried beside my ancestors. It will mean so much to her." "Shang." His name clung to her throat. It hurt to speak. "You can't give up. You have to fight on. You have to live. Tell her not to be sad. Tell her I'm with father." Mulan bit her lip. She was trembling, and not from the cold. The bleakness in Shang's face. The certainty in his words that he was going to die. It couldn't be. A swell of heat burst in her throat, and she had to fight not to let the tears come. She would not let Shang's words shatter her, not without a fight. She took his hand, his cold, limp hand, and entwined her fingers in his. She squeezed gently. "Yes," she whispered. "I promise, but you too, Ping," Shang interrupted. "Don't blame yourself." That small smile again. It pained Mulan to see it more than it comforted her. She clenched her fists until her nails bit into her palms. A silent sob escaped her throat. Her lungs burned. "You have to keep fighting. We'll be in the Imperial City in a few days. Just hang on, Shang, please." "At least now I know." He stopped to gather his breath, then closed his eyes again. "Now I know that China will be in good hands."